you show, I love this moment. And for those of you who haven't seen the film, you have to go out and see it. And I think that you arrange private screenings, right?
We've right now we don't have any more private screenings set up in the US, but the film is available on iTunes, on Google Play, on Amazon, Vimeo on demand, so people can find it that way.
It's just so thought-provoking. It stirred a lot, and I love that moment where he puts on the mask. I grew up in Africa, and my parents had these most beautiful African masks on the house, you know, not kind of the McDonald's version of authentic African art, but the real deal. And so Dr. Peterson says, well, you know, this is my face, and then he puts on the mask, and this is who people think I am. You quoted something on Twitter where a child had said, well, there's this and this, which one is he, Mom?
Right, which one is real?
Yeah. What do you think is real? What
that moment, I mean, it's in the film twice because of how important that moment was for me. And it just happened in this kind of accidental offhand moment, actually, where I was setting up for an interview, and I was having an error happening with my camera. So I was trying to work that out. And then once I got it recording, but we hadn't really started yet, and he asked me, oh, is it working now? Well, hey, we can do this. And he just randomly picks up the mask and he said what he said. So it was just this really perfect, raw moment. And I thought it captured so much of what was happening underneath with the film. There's so many layers to it. There's the Jungian psychology. There's the shadow, this idea of the monster. There's the idea of even, you know, the persona and trying to survive fame and what it means to, you know, be yourself and then have your public persona as well. So we wanted to play with the idea of masks because throughout all of this, there's this transformation in Jordan's life, and it's like, well, who is Jordan Peterson? And
you know, in Hebrew, any body part that is double, like hands, feet, ears, eyes, is plural. But anything that there's only one of, like your nose, your mouth, your head, it's singular. It's in the noun. But your face is called panim, plural, because we're all two-faced. And then if you re-vocalize those vowels, it makes the word pnim, which is inwardness. And I think that to get to the inside, you have to reconcile the two faces. You know, there has to be this negotiation and navigation of ourselves so that we can get deeply into the inside. And for me, that moment was resonant with all of that, you know, his many faces. And it seems that people see the face that they are. There's a mystical teacher, the Baal Shem Tov, Rabbi Yisrael Baal Shem Tov, and he says what you see is a mirror. You know, the other person is a mirror of yourself.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And we very much made the film kind of keeping that idea in mind of wanting to just reflect back to society, like, here's what happened. Here are all the nuanced, complex ways that this manifested. And it's been interesting to see the very different ways that people interpret parts of the film at times. There's one person who I think put it very succinctly. Oh, sure. So there's a part of the film where there's three young boys who are 15, 16 years old who are really excited to go to one of Jordan's talks. And that's a part of the film where there's some people who watch that and they're just all smiles and think that these boys are adorable and self-reflective and intelligent in the way that they speak about how Jordan has affected their lives, why they're so interested and excited to go to the show. And then there's some other people that see that part of the film. I mean, we even had, this is a bit of a more, I think, absurd interpretation where someone wondered if those boys were alt-right. So, but anyway, I don't really know how they could have gotten that interpretation, but you know, they kind of see it in a very, they're worried that, well, these boys have become, you know, part of this, you know, Jordan Peterson, obsessive, larger than life kind of character. And of course they do see him as this celebrity figure, and he is this famous academic now, and he sold over 3 million books around the world. But again, I think there is nuance in that scene where there certainly is this excitement of like, wow, I'm going to meet Jordan Peterson. But there's a self-reflective quality, especially from that one boy who's then even asking his friends like, oh, do you think I'm overdoing it in the way? Am I propping him up too high?
I noticed coming up for me resistance to you during that. And I totally understood why you did it. It was like I was trying to just regulate my response and observe it. The way I understood what happened there, so for those who haven't seen the movie, all these boys are speaking very enthusiastically about about Dr. Peterson and also the impact he's made on their lives. And one of the boys, he was on the left of the bed, says something that's quite hyperbolic. I think he's just being enthusiastic and young. And then one of the other friends says, well, maybe not that. And then as soon as that happens,
it's a legendary figure, I think is.
Yeah, that he's a legend. Well, maybe not quite that. Like, let's not give him sainthood. Let's not raise him on a pedestal. And as soon as the friend puts his foot on the brake, they start backpedaling. And to me, that was about just teen dynamics and, that social, horizontal relationship that we're navigating. I always think of our relationships as being an X and Y axis, and we're at the center, and the Y axis is my relationship with my higher power and my own soul, and the X axis is the personal dynamic that is we're dealing with all the time, and the two influence each other. So I felt like that horizontal axis with the teens it's really important at that point in your life. The older you get, so your focus shifts. Why did I feel uncomfortable with you? It was like, okay, I get it, you're a journalist, this is what you're meant to do, but I felt that they were so exposed and that it was really prime material for misinterpretation. Does that make sense to you? Like that someone watching
for misinterpretation of
on the part of the viewer,
of how people receive Jordan.
I felt that the boys would be misinterpreted.
I see.
They were maybe trying to cover up their adulation for him, and that through that lens, he would be misinterpreted as someone who sets himself up as almost, I don't want to say a demagogue, I don't know exactly what the word would be, but it just looked to me that in their moment of vulnerability, which I understood to be a very social dynamic, they would take a hit and he would take a hit. And it's so interesting to me that that's the moment that you mention as one where there was such controversy.
Well, one person put it very, I think captured it very well to say that this film in some ways is like a Rorschach test, like the ink blot. People can see one thing and then see another. That's one of those moments in the film, and there are several others as well. But I think, the way that I see that scene is there's a lot of nuance to, there's this adulation for Jordan and like kind of putting him up on a pedestal, but it's also you're 15 years old and, people do that with musicians all of the time.
Right.
It's very interesting to see 15-year-olds doing this with an academic, with a philosopher, with a psychology professor, but then at the same time to have this self-reflection of themselves and of each other. So there's these layers, and I think they speak very intelligently and with such self-reflection that is really admirable for their age.
Every moment in that movie was just, like, I felt myself being taken on the ocean and just unmoored and moving, and then like, oh, what's in the heavens and what's down underneath. It was really wonderful.